and welcome to the Clearly podcast, where we interview industry leaders to really talk about what it really takes to change the way we move. Today, we're in the Clearly headquarters, and I'm joined by someone who doesn't just talk the talk. He is someone who's leading the future of charging infrastructure. Ben from Connected Kerb has worked across telematics, connected vehicles, and now connected infrastructure. He brings a wealth of knowledge, and we're really excited to have him. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me. Privilege.
Lovely to have you here. Ben, we've been chatting along the years around the future of mobility, and really was kind of sharing the conversation with a bigger group. Let's kick off around who are you, where do you come from, and who is Connected Kerb?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be back sitting down with you, talking about some good topics. So I've got a background in automotive. I worked for Bosch, Jaguar Land Rover. I worked for a couple of SMEs. And then the last 4 years, I've been working with Connected Kerb. Our primary function is to put out public infrastructure, public EV charging for people who don't have driveways. So depending on which facts you want to follow, 60% of the UK population don't have access to home charging driveways. And we're trying to correct that through the local authorities, put out affordable and accessible EV infrastructure.
Fantastic. 4 years?
Yes. Yeah.
And the company was founded?
2018.
2018?
Yeah.
You've just closed a very big funding round?
Yep, National Wealth Fund. Privileged to have them on board also. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And that was, how much did you raise?
55 with NWF, and then a 10 million follow-on from Aviva. So it was a 65 million total. Aviva have backed us since 2021, and we continue a great relationship with them. The National Wealth Fund changes the business slightly because obviously it is first and foremost a bank, but obviously has strong links directly with the Treasury. So it was a really good vote of confidence from them that we're on something. We've got a lot of common values around access to EV infrastructure, particularly thinking about public infrastructure. As I said, for people who don't have a driveway, the barrier to entry on EV is much greater. So this fund really is designed to deploy as much EV infrastructure off British production lines by British people for British people. That's
amazing. Really, congratulations. Extremely tough in any environment, let alone this environment, to raise money for a company that is both infrastructure, hardware infrastructure, and software, which is what you're driving.
Yeah.
Bit controversial, but would love to kind of dive a little bit into the difficulties or the ease that you had in raising that money.
Yeah, it's a really good question, first of all. So first and foremost, it is an infrastructure fund and it is about the deployment of charge points. But what I think the EV industry is now getting to a real maturing point is it's not led by environmentalists. We've had enough orange paint splashed over us to sort of recognize that's not the way to go about it. It's now led largely by economists, business people and technologists. So although the infrastructure is there to build and deploy the charge points, there's a strong recognition the very next day you need a great user experience, you need a ubiquity of payments, connected vehicle in the future, the transaction on the car, we'll be talking about that shortly. It is a pure digital play. So we're at this real transition point where we've gone from design, manufacture and operating our own charge points through to being a little bit more hardware agnostic, but we now have full control of our core software systems. So we've moved off SaaS to get started, and we now own our app, own our back office, and we're building a lot of future technology that moves the business in readiness for sort of energy management, but primarily will be a software function going forward.
Interesting. And just on that hardware side, so you have your own hardware, but you're also agnostic on the hardware?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we've got about 40 different badges now under management. We build 7 chargers ourselves, 7 different chargers, but the rest are all manufactured by third parties. And we're finding hardware's commoditizing very, very quickly.
Brilliant.
In both AC and DC now. Completely different business models around both, but the hardware is becoming a real commodity. So it really is a race on price, a race on quality, and a race on longevity of those parts as well.
And payments? You're also fronting different payment providers?
Yes, payments a key part of it. So we use all the traditional ones through our app, but we also support 11 different roaming partners who are all offering a different payment transaction, from the humble RFID card, which is strong and lives on, all the way through to sort of future payments. And we're very passionate about payment ubiquity, but again, we'll be talking around the fleet manager. Fleet defines itself very differently depending on who you're talking to at that moment. Everything from the RFID through to full sort of corporate billing solutions. Our task really is to make the charge points as accessible as we can by any means of payment.
Sure. Very interesting, because before, of course, you had different players wanting to have their own app, their own interface, their own connection and relationship with the customer, which obviously allows for that potential premium or upselling or taking of data and utilizing that data. Do you think that that's also, we said it, of course, the greenwashing and just this whole green agenda, which maybe have not had a dollar sign behind it. Do you think also that people are realizing that maybe data as a data core isn't the value, but data insights is the value, and therefore offering that data out to have ubiquity across payments happened? What was the shift there?
Yes, yeah, really interesting. I think it's a transition we've really seen in the last 5-6 years where you and I have been in that connected car space for a little while, and it was all about data. Data's the new oil. All of the buzzwords being kicked around. Our in-house data team are called the Insights team, and they're really about packaging and learning things,
great.
telling us stuff we didn't know, and then importantly sharing that across the widest network we can, because we have a very core function to deploy as much infrastructure as we can and operate that well with really good uptime. But we're really learning a lot around the future of the use case. So we have a great mobile app. I'm fiercely proud of it. We're the highest rated app in the app stores for AC charging. So 4.4 very good stars. But obviously that's not for everybody. I think our app is strong because we ultimately sell convenience. So we're charging where you sleep, where you work. It's a slightly longer dwell. And most of our customers are very habitual. They return again and again and again if that service is good. We're not an out-of-town, rapid guest experience where you want to tap, go, charge as quickly as you can. All of the things around the user are completely different in that use case. So our core business, that residential on-street charger, is a local and loyal consumer base that we want to nurture through loyalty, reward schemes, maybe subscriptions. These are all things I think the UK is getting much more comfortable with, from entertainment, but now into other services. I think the subscription is quite interesting for the UK. It's baked in the US. Everything's on a subscription, right? So that model's different. But for Rapids and other business models in EV, tap, go, contactless, the humble RFID card, as I said, still really apply.
Brilliant. Fantastic to hear. This is something that we did not hear years ago when we last spoke. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's go tapping into this fleet manager, those that are really driving this change.
Yes.
So I guess the fleet manager in the prior world was about fuel cards and maybe maintenance logs. Seems now it is still around the emission agenda, but with the economist hat on them as opposed to just a green hat. It's obviously charging infrastructure and it's hitting the ROI when you are doing that transition. What are you seeing as the fleet manager of 2025 beyond 2030?
Yeah, so our view, I think just for context, is really through a keyhole, right? We're a sort of infrastructure player to anybody. Quite a large cohort, or let's say our big spenders, are traditionally part of a fleet. So I think our biggest value customer to us is actually a scaffolding company, and they do the most charging of all customers in our network. There are 150,000 people on the app. Number one, biggest spend is a scaffolding company. But the things we hear from those users are really still quite simple challenges around the RFID card works really well. I can leave it in the vehicle. I don't need sophisticated driver monitoring or job card mileage and things like that. They're quite binary asks, I would say. A lot of questions around corporate billing, registering a company card. And that's why I think things like Fleet Core and the All-Star card and things like that still have a really good place because they fix a huge amount of the current customer journey. I think what we also observe, though, in a few is how that then starts to evolve, particularly in local authorities for ESG reporting, more analytics around the job role, job card, even ticketing and integrating with things like Dynamics where they have job carding. That's where they want to start unlocking payments and maybe billing an activity against a particular account, activity or a customer. That's where those basic systems like the RFID card run out of puff. So we're seeing an evolution, but I think what I've really noticed coming from the sort of the Bosch connected car world and the future of the vehicle 2050, actually, honest John on the street right now needs a system that works. Uptime of kit is important. And they're getting into sort of corporate billing and just the ubiquity around billing and expenses, those sorts of services. That already is quite pleasing still for many, you know. They were around for a long time, but they're starting to really proliferate now.
Make it easy for me. I understand my systems, my way of doing it.
Yes.
Do the same, but for this new world of electric vehicles. I know how to pay for my fuel, but now I have all these apps I don't really understand. I have to download. Just please make it easy for me.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's, again, what I'm hearing here is this unprecedented level of collaboration with different entities, building that trust and allowing for that connectivity, I guess, through APIs and actually pulling or sharing of data across those different entities. Is that happening?
Yes, that's right. I think, again, EV's been through quite a transition where some large aggregators for that data connectivity move very, very quickly, raise an awful lot of money. But sadly, a number of those have been wrapped up where they've struggled to monetize those models. Because it's happening sort of business to business anyway.
Yes.
There's good standardization in the EV that I'm proud of, but it needs to be a lot better, and we need to keep, you know, that harmonization, that standardization to be able to really, you know, go on the journey here, manage the experience. Ultimately, I see the socket as a humble valve. It's vending power. different rates, different prices, different times of day, and that needs to be as ubiquitous as it possibly can. And we're talking with everybody from the big, the World Pays, the Visas, the MasterCards, right down to some of the disruptors who are just trying to make that simple for the user.
Sure, got it. Downtime, what we call downtime anxiety, because obviously you had range anxiety, which is still an issue, but seems to be less and less over time, especially when you have that data to kind of model things out and say, well, probably not going to do those long kilometers anyway. Downtime could just be the queue time, right? Where actually for either the frustration from, you and I, or our audience, or it's how much it's costing me with a very small margin business in logistics and the carrier business. My driver is going to have to wait. How do I factor that in? How do I price that? How do I cost that out in my modeling? Are you seeing this as being still an issue, or are you actually seeing that for the passenger side of the landscape, that downtime is just getting less and less?
It's getting less and less. It's something I entirely obsess about. We call it uptime. So our network's running about 98% uptime, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, if you are caught in the 2% when you need a charge, the experience is shocking. So we're really trying to foster a culture of, this is a bit cliche, but every charge counts. Your last experience is what really matters. We find the EV population are quite fickle in that if they have a bad experience, they will disappear. If they have a good experience, they will stay. It's quite hardwired as a sort of behavior. We've lost people over a bad experience. The challenge for us is that we're typically deploying 6 or 8 chargers along a street. So there should always be a choice of sockets. Even if you've got one out, you should have that availability on another socket nearby. There's obviously a firm handshake there with physically getting access to the sockets and parking, which is the next thing in EV, seeing those two industries really merge together. But I think our uptime is pretty good. The challenge with uptime is always then the cost. We're managing a product that largely sells to a local authority. 70-80% of our business is local authority. We're all reading the headlines, they're cash strapped. Suddenly adding in a contactless payment terminal, demanding near aerospace uptime of equipment that has to hit a certain price point and be highly affordable is a really tricky engineering task. That's pretty much what I spend my time obsessing over.
In the space of charging, do you believe you're in a unique position, or do you believe that it's a reason for your success, the fact that you're doing both the software and the hardware? Do you think it's normal that actually you would have two companies that are obsessing and have the talent pool to do both? Because we can look at other business models. I mean, the bus industry is one, for example, where the talent is just so different, you must split them. An asset-light model, and you just obsess around all the things you're speaking about. Or do you believe that actually owning and operating the assets and then really obsessing around what you're speaking here is just user experience? Everything that goes into it is user experience. Do you think it's unique, or is it the reason for your success?
I would say it's niche. I think if you're in the AC space, where ultimately you're trading convenience and you're looking to, a nod to the future of energy management, the retention of users and good uptime service, where they come again and again and again. And we see, our competitors, lots of people are trying different things. What's the role of advertising in that space? What's the role of retention, the future of subscription, bundled services with other services? I think that is, really important. I think in terms of like the DC network, hardware is so different to any software experience where you don't have that loyal user base, but you need to hit a price point on the equipment. It's more polarized between infrastructure and software. But for us, the AC, I think all AC partners should be looking at that transition to software. Hopefully we started quite early. I think we did. I think we are fairly unique in Connected Kerb that we actually own both, where we design, manufacture charge points and our software. But we can't do it all. And that's a bit of a transition I'm grappling with at the moment with our leadership. What does the infrastructure business need to do to thrive? And are those the same objectives you would build a SaaS company? Of course, they're very different.
In a way, it's kind of operating two businesses that really collaborate very closely.
Yeah.
Two brothers or two sisters, or a brother and a sister that are told you should kind of collaborate here.
Dependent siblings. I think my interest in is that if you've got some ownership or some control of the sockets, it feels like sort of the cliche is it yours to lose? We can operate like the valve. We can offer a lot of dynamic tariffs, dynamic charging of the vehicles in service to the grid, in service to the user. So we're not just an app because we own the hardware. So it gives us a really strong footing into software where there are 50, maybe 100, Daniel. I don't know how many CPMS back offices there are. But if you don't own the socket, it's very hard to get into.
And I guess it's because you're in the sockets, you've got deep understanding, you've got a lot of data that allows you to build on that software side to offer it out to the other hardware companies.
That's what we try to trade with local authorities. You know, if you're a fleet manager or even just in the local authority right now, you've been tasked to go and buy some EV chargers. Your job just went from whatever your core job was. Many are not dedicated in EV still.
Sure.
So this is, I've got to do EV. So you've got to figure out hardware, figure out funding,
Sure.
figure out software to operate, build some SLAs with some service credits around them to make sure all your suppliers are working honestly, protect your user experience, go and publicly consult your user. You know, if you're building and digging in the streets, it is a hugely complex task to navigate. So our job through the data insights is trying to de-risk that journey for them, and then really try and collaborate and have a very open dialogue, not let them figure out EV charging and then come back to us. Try and say, look, this is exactly who we are, what we don't do and what we can do, and then try and get on the journey with them, because there's no silver bullet in EV. It's still very new.
Of course.
But yeah, it's very much a sort of classic collaboration with your client. Listen to your client, but also try and educate them.
Collaboration with your client, I love that. On the data insights, this is going to the vehicle here and what we really mean. Everyone's talking about connected vehicles, and we've been speaking about connected vehicles for a very long time.
Yeah.
And we've been speaking about data monetization for even longer. I think we can park that aside because that's kind of, you know, we've breathed it, we've hoped for it.
Hydrogen. Yeah.
Exactly. On the connected vehicle, what do you see as a connected vehicle? Because some just see it as a bit of GPS and maybe a dashboard that's very simple. But do you think that, one, what is it? And secondly, are the fleets or the fleet managers utilizing that data across different areas in the best way? Or are they kind of sticking to one area and then doing what they know best, which could be Excel or a consultant?
Yeah, really interesting. I think there's lots of answers to that question. We see a real mix. I think the ones I like are some of the use cases Ford are playing with, which are they truly breakthrough innovations? I'm not sure, but I love the idea the custom transit can now order your Deliveroo if you're coming home late. They've got the weighted loading for your carpenter van. I was talking with some of the Ford guys a couple of weeks ago, and as you're running out of screws as a carpenter, the van can prompt and reorder screws. So there's some nice applications for connected car. I'm not sure ordering pizzas from a van is what the whole industry stands for and the multi-billion pounds that are going into it. But I haven't really seen a big breakthrough change yet. Equally, the other end of the spectrum, putting an iPad into the cab is not a connected vehicle. So I think there is still a real mix on where those breakthrough technologies are coming. Where I'm very interested in is things where we're really seeing some great data analysis around mileage, transition, an educated view on entering EV into your fleet, particularly around power management, depot management, job carding, where it really touches operations. That's where I think the big innovations will come. So the vehicle itself, I think, is less interesting, but the operational efficiency, and again, the data, the underpinning data behind that, is where I think we'll see some real breakthroughs on the balance sheet, on the cost structure, on the next purchase decision, and ultimately a transition to EV.
I think maybe going back to the point around the payments is that there's so much innovation in the market, but actually really what happened with you is you're using fairly simple technology, but because you're blending technologies and then you're allowing for that collaboration and kind of a one view or even a one payment system, that was the innovation.
Yeah.
Step by step, we can utilize more and more technology. And I think maybe in the vehicle/fleet space, for a very long time, you've had telematic systems that knows where a vehicle goes. You've had, maintenance or operation systems that existed, fuel cards, of course, and asset management, sort of what type of vehicle it is. But again, I guess, we haven't brought that data together to say, okay, now I know what's going on, and let's just make decisions on that. And think about connected vehicle data on my window wipers will tell me it's raining outside. Well, I can see it's raining outside, so that's
Yeah. These are sort of soft features. Yeah.
Features that may be great, but let's just do the basics first that we just haven't cracked, as opposed to just trying to do innovation for innovation's sake.
Yeah. And the thing I think possibly a reason for that is EV, because you link up the electrons across the supply chain, the efficiency of the user. You've got a hardwired, was perhaps not the right analogy, but you have a conduit across the whole value chain, which these new fleet systems can make use of. At a time where when they were coming to market, so 2012, 2015, 2018 was a good sort of explosion. Wet fuel suddenly went to electric, and that was the big buzz and the hype, and it stalled some of those innovations. But now we're back at the convergence between energy and transport. I think a lot of these fleet systems are well positioned to win once the obsession over how a vehicle's powertrain is energized cools off a little bit, which,
Everyone wants to electrify, or rather, everyone wants to reduce cost whilst also hopefully reducing emissions.
Yeah.
You've spoken about a lot of blockers that I think you've alleviated in terms of if you have no on-street parking when people don't always have driveways, let's solve it. I'm bombarded with different apps, let's solve it in terms of payments. Do you think those are the key blockers, or are there any other key blockers that are preventing more and more people to turn to electric?
Great question. I think the media is something I talk about a lot, and it's still, we're reading headlines about electric vehicles are dangerous, they catch fire. I need to check my sources, but I was reading on LinkedIn, there's something like about 1,000 EV vehicles per 100,000. 25 EV vehicles per 100,000 and 1,500 ICE vehicle fires per 100,000. So the facts just aren't true. The press will report anything EV, it's clickbait. And that's hugely detrimental to the rollout. And I think it's confusing a lot of people who would have made the transition so far. I think also in our usership, that's compounded where we've seen a typical technical older purchase of an EV. They're not making a rational purchase. 2012, these vehicles are expensive. The infrastructure isn't there. Why would you buy an EV? It's not convenience. It was curiosity. Now we're seeing that change. And I'm very, very cautious of, are we at mass adoption? But our users are becoming, I would say, EV is becoming a lot more normalized to a much wider consumer base. And the people we're now engaging with aren't really interested in EV as their sort of forefathers were technical enthusiasts.
Got it.
So maybe we'll start to see that adoption curve. So I think the media is still a real sticking point, a real blocker. I don't know how we crack that apart from keep putting the evidence forward and keep driving the facts home, really, that these are highly useful vehicles.
I think that's new. I think it's exactly the same with the autonomous vehicles, is that they're much safer than you and I or any of them driving. But again, I think it's new, it's technology, it's something you need to get used to. So it meets the headlines of, oh, it's new, they told you it was good, look at it, we've got evidence against it. And and part of it is also, I guess, driver education that we see on the kind of the logistics side is that it's okay, you're fine, and the changes aren't that big. Humans are very adaptable.
Very adaptable, yeah.
You just need to kind of get them over that first initial line to say, look, you see, it's kind of a nice experience.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard it throughout history, right? Horses bite, steam engines explode.
Sure.
You'll break up if you go over 100 miles an hour, all of that.
Yep.
EV is the next big challenge.
Of course.
It's very sticky. It's great to chat in pubs about all of these things, but the fact is they're just not that bad. Sure. It's a change in powertrain.
Yep.
Where it is stuck, I think, is the skills across our customer base in terms of site selection, funding, all the things we touched on earlier about the complexity around that buyer, rollout of infrastructure. Where do you deploy? Millennial-old question, but we're still grappling with site selection. And then the funding models around it. A lot of this kit is quite expensive, to install infrastructure this year, digging holes, wiring up cables. There's a lot of upfront infrastructure capital that needs to have the right contract framework to de-risk that over time.
So part of it is just user awareness needing to be correct, but probably a bigger part of this is really that upfront infrastructure spend. Who pays for it? It's, I guess, on your side. I mean, for our side, again, logistics versus passenger usually is our customer, but on your side of the passenger, you try to wrap that into an all-in-one package for the customer?
Yes. So part of our funding enables us to put out, funded equipment, which is very useful, or match funded with the Levi Fund, the Low Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Fund.
Sure.
But that, I would say, is probably, they can probably see the sunset on those funds now, because we're finding the private sectors there ready to start funding this infrastructure because the contracts are long-term. They understand the payment flow, the access to the user, all the different things in the value ecosystem that could be turned on around this equipment. So I think the private sector is ready now to pick up the mantle on EV. The government started to do enough to catalyse the transition. We talk about this being an inevitable market now, but we're very cautious on the timelines of what that growth curve looks like.
Of course, and again, probably quicker if there were the data insights to allow for the analysis of, this is not so risky, this is a calculated risk. I can see the return, I can see the break even, I can see that the risk metrics are on the timeline, but without that, I guess people are holding back until you can have that visibility.
Yes, yeah.
Got it. Bold prediction, even if it's not mainstream, what do you think is really going to be a big change in the next few years?
That's a fabulous question. There's a few I'd like to go to. I think for me, probably underwhelming, but it's just to normalize EV. I think the myths will fade away and this will become quite ubiquitous, quite accepted, and it will just naturally sit into the supply the supply chain. I think people will buy the cars and realize they're not that bad. Fleet managers will make a transition and forget their worries and just start to operate them, enjoy the benefits that come with them in terms of energy and the wider ecosystem around a hub or across the whole fleet, whatever they're trying to achieve. So I hope the big bold thing will be actually this will normalize quite quickly if we get it right. That would be fantastic. We were talking with a payment company the other day, and they mentioned around the transactions that you miss, the ones that don't work, but hundreds of thousands of people walk through the TfL network, tap go, and don't even think about the payment.
Sure.
EV transition should get to that point, but it's about uptime, user experience, accessibility, getting rid of all the faults, that kind of thing. And let's not forget, the industry is still very, very new. Relative to the wet fuel market, the investment is still negligible, and we've only been around 20 years or so. So there's still quite a lot to figure out and get right here.
What percent now? Do you know the figure in terms of how many EVs versus ICE vehicles are in the UK?
We've got about 1.2 million EVs in this country. So 35 million vehicles.
You see, so we're making that transition. Actually, again, getting the headlines out is not so native.
Yeah.
Not first mover advantage anymore. It's just around really now the mass production or the mass rollout is really about that, as you said, the customer experience.
Yeah, that's right. March this year, 65,000 EVs thereabouts. So that's the biggest month for the UK in terms of purchase. Those are people turning up through their fleet or in the dealership saying yes. Fantastic.
You've worked, as you said in your introduction, across startups, corporates, and now, for me, you're sitting between both, as I mentioned time and time again, this infrastructure / software and trying to bridge the two. You've been an innovator across all of them. I guess what would be interesting to share is what do you think makes it stick when it comes to making change and across any field?
I think for me, it's about being able to communicate your user story, the user experience you turn on, in a very, very succinct way. And we've read the books. We've all sat in the pitch decks that really don't work. But and I think I'm learning this the older I get, but I remember hearing it, if you can't explain this easily in the pub, you probably haven't quite got it yet or refined it enough. So I think that's happening very well. I think we're pretty good at it at this point with the local authority, the on-street play. It makes sense to people, and that's working very, very well. So I still see there's quite a lot of refinement elsewhere in the industry, but I think the same thing's happened specifically around ESG, where it's moved from an environmental tick box to something quite tangible, measurable, that offers real benefits back to contract frameworks and things like that. So I think being really concise, really true to your user is still the order of the day. And I don't think that's changed in a millennium. So
great. Coming to the end, just wanted to touch on a couple of things. We've spoken kind of offline, and maybe we started to share a bit with the audience around UK market in terms of, again, from a funding point of view, a rollout point of view, versus, say, for example, where many founders sadly still go, which is to the US. Can you share a little bit about that in terms of what your view is of the differences of working between two markets? Do you believe it would have been easier in terms of raising capital or rolling out such innovations if you were operating in the US versus the UK?
I think, as we were saying, I still firmly believe it is easier to raise larger amounts of cash out of the US. The whole market is geared completely differently in the way that the UK isn't. It's just the order of magnitude is a different market. But I think the other thing that we're noticing, particularly in our own sphere, is EV is 20, 25 years in the US. They've understood the market quite well, but they haven't met that mass adoption curve. So Europe overall, but the UK particularly, has a real opportunity to ship that knowledge over to the US. I think our challenge has been around understanding the hardware market versus the software and defining ourselves on that market entry, in a really succinct way, again, around the user, around the customer. And then I think particularly the second challenge for us is very complex governments, large government organizations, tiers of departments, sons of married daughters in those floors, trying to understand that network as a new company is very, very complex. So the US is a very challenging market, and I've been talking with a range of professionals about how to go about it well. I think a bit like cookbooks, you should read as many as you can and have a go. But we're actually finding a bit more success in the southern continents, where EV is quite new. They want to get ahead quickly with operational knowledge, but they haven't got perhaps all the complexities or bureaucracy around, a complex US market. Talk about site selection. Do you go East Coast, West Coast? It's a completely different business for both. So.
Leapfrogging, as it always is, greenfield site.
Yeah.
No complexities. We want it. It's fresh. No, less data analytics, just plow into where you want to go.
Yeah.
Then we're back in the UK. You've got UK billboards, and they're going to have one tagline everywhere.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Oh, I'm sort of torn between some sort of bearded hippie saying, don't believe the media, that kind of thing. I think for me, just fun, I'd say have a go. I'm a big believer in travel. If you can do it in EV, have a go. The amount of people I still meet talking about it who haven't actually sat in a vehicle or experienced it. Or they say, oh, but they catch fire. Like, have you sat in one? that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I think I just say, have a go.
Have a go.
Something like that.
Ben, thank you so much. Really grounded, so practical. So many knowledge that you've shared between the dependent twin, as we call it, the brother and sister of a hardware software company, really having to work very hard together. Customer experience, obsess about it, make it that they don't even know that it's different because there are no issues. And when there are issues, make it that you've made their day to change it. Collaborate with customer, right? As opposed to just solving their problem. No, let's collaborate and actually, do this shift together, have a go. Media, I know you want to have click rates, but actually let's have click rates in terms of positive stories and enable that change, not prevent the change. And of course, the infrastructure spend holding you back a bit. So more data analytics to allow us to take more risk faster to speed up that investment. And if you want to make a change and you want to do a new form of innovation, get your pub pitch correct.
Very good. Great summary. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining. For everyone joining the Clearly podcast today, thank you also for listening. And we'll be back soon with more leaders sharing practical and grounded stories. Thank you.
Thank you.